Okay, these are a sampling of questions from the first group in 1-3. I think all of these are direct substitution. So if you can put the 2 directly in place of the x, that's what you do. Here I'm going to put the -3 in, so I'll put a -3 in. When you square a negative, it becomes a positive. The result here is 0. 27, if you put it in a 0, gives you the secant of 0. Secant is 1 over cosine. Cosine of 0 is 1, which makes it 1 over 1, or 1. 33, we could put the 0 directly into here. And if I put in a 0, e to the 0 is 1 times the cosine of 0, which is also 1. 1 times 1 makes it a 1. If I put 1 directly into here, you get natural log of 3x plus e to the first, which basically is your answer. Oh yeah, I apologize. I did not replace the x with a 1, did I? You're going to replace the x with a 1. So replace the x with a 1 and you get natural log of 3 plus e. All of the ones from 5 to 35 are all just simply direct substitution. Sorry, it is 5 to 81 odds. We're doing 5 to 81 odds. You get to 43, part D, it's going to involve 16 to the 3/2. You have to realize that if you have a fractional exponent, it's always power over root. If you don't mind, I'm going to try and teach you best practices. Do the root first, it's a square root, and then the power. Unless you like doing roots of extremely large numbers, I recommend you do the root first. Square root of 16 is 4 to the 3rd power. This answer should be 64. If you make it to 51, you can put in a 0, but it's going to give you 0 over 0. Since it's a fraction that factors, you might try factor and cancel, leaving me this. I'm going to replace the x with a 0. So I'm going to replace the x with a 0. And I think I get 1 over -1, giving me an answer of -1. 53, if you put in a -3, you also get 0 over 0. But I see this as the difference of squares, x plus 3, x minus 3. And the x plus 3's could cancel, leaving me x minus 3. And you're doing the limit as x approaches -3. So I replace a -3 in, and I get 53 to equal -6. Now there's common denominators, there's rationalizing. I'm going to attempt to do one of each, but the next one is a common denominator. You can always find a common denominator, like in 61, by multiplying the 2 denominators together. So that gives me 3 times 3 plus x. Again, you want to multiply by a fancy form of 1 so you don't change the value. When I multiply here, the 3 plus x's cancel, leaving me 1 times 3. Whenever you subtract, use parentheses. Distributing here, the 3's cancel, leaving me the 3 plus x. When you distribute, 3 and a minus 3 is 0, leaves me just a -x on top, which will now cancel with the x on the bottom. I want the limit as x approaches 0, That means that I'm going to replace the x's all with a 0 at this point. And I think I would get a valid answer of -1/9. Okay, this one, when you see radicals, it's still going to give you 0 over 0, but when you see the radicals, you might think conjugate to rationalize. The conjugate of a minus b is a plus b. So here I'm going to multiply by a plus b. So what does that become? Radical x plus 5 over radical x plus 5 plus 5. Square root of 5, right, thank you. So when you multiply a minus b times a plus b, it becomes a squared minus b squared. If this is a, what's a squared? The same thing without the square root. Whenever you subtract, use parentheses, even though you don't need it here. If this is b, b squared would be 5. I think that just makes the numerator x, which is going to cancel with the x on the bottom. And we're doing the limit as x approaches 0. Don't forget there's a 1 on top. So if I replace the x with a 0, I get 1 over radical 5 plus another radical 5, which is 1 over 2 radical 5. I hope this helps with the assignment. See what you can do with them.